And here we go. In Condita, the word for famous or renowned. Justitia religioque, there's the enclitic. Ea tempestate, ablative. Numa pompilia erat. Okay, so ea tempestate, in this time, erat there was, of Numa Pompilius, these are the genitives. It was in Condita, so it was well renowned for its justitia, which is its justice, and religio. Religio is in the dative ablative case, so there's a lot of ablatives here and genitives. So this time was renowned for its justice and religiosity or piety or observances of religion in the time of Numa. Curibus Sabinus habitabat consultissimus vir. There's a nice superlative. Ut in illa quisquam esse aetate poterat omnis divini atqui humani juris. Curibus Sabinus habitabat, so this would be Numa, I'm guessing. He was habitabating, he was living in Cures, this Curibus. Sabini is the Sabines, it's a plural second. So this was Cures is a Sabine settlement town. A consultissimus vir, vir is man in the nominative. It's an irregular second as well. This is a past passive, and it's a superlative, as I just said. So well regarded or dignified or something you might want to say. He had plans, literally. It says, ut, as in illa quisquam esse atat. So as anyone in this atate, in this age or era, quisquam's anyone, poterat was able to be. Omnis juris, in all laws of the divine and human. So this is what this consulting bit's about. He's learned in all these laws of gods and man. Auctorum doctrina is, so the author of his doctrines, so his teacher in other words, quia because non extat alias, because alias was not exto, standing out or still surviving. I just want to say standing out. Falso, this would be like in English, in a false sense. Edun would be produced or so. Samian Pythagorean. So his teacher, which there's a false report that it was Samian Pythagoras, quem whom, Servio Tullio regnate Roma. This is ablative absolute, because then Servius Tullius was regnating at Rome. So then the king at Rome was Servius Tullus, centum amplius post annos. 100 years, amplius more, post annos, after these years. So this is why this was a false story that it was Samius Pythagoras. He lived more than 100 years later. In Ultima Italia Ora, here we have in Ultima Ore, which is the furthest shore, split with the genitive of Italy. Circa, the preposition, around Metapontum, Metapontus is it? Metapontum. And Herclea and Crotona, which is Croton. Juvenum emulatium, this is the genitive of juven. Studia would be probably ablative in studies. Coetus. So this here means having gathered, and constat means it's agreed, is the infinitive. So it is agreed that he had, coetus, gathered together a rivalry of young man, or young man emulating him in studies. So put that all together. It was not this same as Pythagoras, and who was the authorem doctrina eos, and that was the reason why it's not him. Ex quibus locus, and from which place, et si, eos domatatis fuisa, and et si usually means although, though it can be and if he had been eos domatus, of the same age and the same era as when Pythagoras had gathered all these people, quae fama in Sabinus, quae looks relative. To string it into English, you could say which fame in the Sabines, because it's got the question mark, it's a question. How could these fame or the reports of him reached in with the accusative towards the Sabines if he had been from these places, which is Metapontum, Heraclea, and etc., which are Greek places. Aut quo linguae commercio, quem. So, and quo commercio would be, and by which This commercio usually means a friendly interaction or something, with which interaction quem ad cupidatem discenda excivisit. So excivit means would have roused or produced. Ad cupidum, desire of discending. Discenda is the gerund of learning. So, and lingua is the tongue. So, in what encounters would they have had a desire of learning? This could have roused them. What common tongue? Quem would just be referring to what it could be. So, by which common tongue could they have learnt from him, even if he was up here, as we saw, eistem aetatis, living in the same age. Quove, the VE is the enclitic for a question. Quo presidio, with what protection, unus, one, per tot gentes dissonus, the per is going to take the accusative. So by which protection could one go per, through, tot, so many, dissonus gentes. These are dissonant races in speech we're talking about. They don't sound the same. He wouldn't be able to understand him. And prevent it would mean he would have reached them. So these were dissonant, not together, in sermon and moribus, which is sermons, a speech is a way of talking. Moribus is their customs or behaviours. Suopti. Suo was with his own. It's a dative ablative, and here's ingenia, which go with it. Igator is therefore or then. The opti at the end, it's just makes it more emphatic. It's one of the alternate styles. So therefore it was his own ingenium, his own inborn nature. Temperatum animum virtutibus fuis opinor. So here's the deponent opinor. So I think, opinor in his opinion, is a head verb, takes the oblata aurica, or whatever, the infinitive anyway, with the accusatives. So it was this, I think, which tempered his mind, which with his own characteristics, was tempered with these virtues, virtutibuses, instructum qui, and instructed non tam pereguintus artibus, and so instructum again. These are things he learnt were not so much from foreign arts or skills. Peregrinus is foreign. Then quam disciplina tetrica ac tristi veterum sabinorum. These are double genitives. So I think it was of his own characters and virtues, basically, that taught him this, not foreign arts. Tetrica is an adjective. It looks like it's going with disciplina here. So it's the stern, and tristi means grim. So it was his stern discipline and the grimness of the veteran Sabines, of the old Sabine race. Quo genere nullum quondam incorruptius fuit. There's a comparative. In which race, the quo genere, no people, quondam in once upon a time or long ago. So there was no race more incorruptible. He's talking about these old Sabine race. So from the start, we put all that together. There's a bit of conjecture about where he learnt his virtues and teachings, but they think it was homegrown. Audito nomine nume. With the name heard, audito nomine, genitive of numa. So when the name had been heard of numa, the patres Romani, they're in apposition nominative, the Roman fathers, quam allo inclinare opes ad Sabinos, rege inde sumpto virabantor. So virabantor means it would seem that sumpto rege, then with the king taken up, or this king taken up into power, the opes, or the resources and power, would incline ad Sabinos towards the Sabines. Tamen, nevertheless, nequi, say quizquam. So we'll just leave the say for a bit. So here we've got, nevertheless, neither would anyone, quizquam, nor nec factionis suum alium, or another of a faction, nec deniqui, and finally patrum aut civium. These are genitives. So neither did anyone think about, say, himself, nor the faction sua of their own faction, or either of the fathers or the citizens. Preferre, put in advance, or prefer, quem anyone, illo viro, to this illustrious fellow, this man, orsi, would dare. So Quizquam did not, Aussie, they didn't dare to prefer anyone out of these groups to Numa. Ad unum to one, or coming together as one group. Omnes, all of them, Numa Pompilio regnum differendum discernit. Discernit means they decided, so they all decided to defer, or to give over, you might want to say, with this gerund, the regnum, the kingdom, over to Numa Pompilio. And there's a daily dictionary, Tetricus. The second adjective. Harsh, gloomy, severe, so it was probably severe in this case. Acetus, past passive for a nominative. He was having been summoned. He was summoned. Sicut, just as. Romulus, another nominative here. So, as Romulus, augurato urbe condenda regnum adeptus est. This is a deponent. Romulus in an augury, looking for signs from the gods. He had obtained this kingdom in the founding of the city, Condenda Urbe. I'm guessing the A here goes with the femaleness for cities, which is normal. So Romulus had done this, and now Numa being summoned, just as Romulus. Dese, concerning himself, quoque also Dios console Iusset. So he ordered that the gods be consulted concerning himself also, as we saw in this little clause, just as Romulus had been. Indi then, ab auguro, from an augur, someone who divines the future. Cui, dative, to who, de inde then. Honoris ergo publicum id perpetuum qui sacerdotium fuit. So sacerdotium is of a priest, so he's a publicum, he's the priest of the public priest, basically, in this case, and this was honoris, of honor. Perpetuum, so perpetuum means eternally, basically. So he was made this priest, and this was a public honor. He would perpetually be a priest. He was deductus into the archem. This is the augur. Deductus means he was led into the citadel in archem, accusative. In lapide, in Latin, in can mean on, especially in the ablative. So on a stone, on a lapide, ad meridium versus. Versus means turn towards, ad meridiums to the south, and conceded. He conceded it on this stone. So, priest was led into the citadel, sat on a stone facing the south, and you've got a public honour for perpetualness from that point on. So the augur ad laevum eos, to his left, to the left of Numa, capite velato, ablative absolute, with his head covered. Capite's the head, velato means covered. He capited his sedam. So the augur, he took his seat, is what it means, to the left. Dextra mano, in his right hand, his dextra, was a baculum, which is a walking stick. Probably means more than that here. Sine nodo, sine takes your blade without knots, basically it means. And a duncam, this means it's a bent baculum, a bent stick. Tenens, present participle, he was holding it. So this is the augur sitting to the left with his head covered. In his right hand he had a curved stick without knots, he was holding it in his dextra mano. Quem litum appellerant, which they call a litum. What do they call that in English? A litus. Inde then, ubi when, prospectu, this is a fourth ablative, in urbem agrum qui capto, so capto prospecto, having taken his sight or a view in with the accusative over the city and the fields, agrum, he precatus Dios, having prayed, Dios, to the gods, regions, these are areas or regions, from Oriente ad occasum, ab from the ablative and ad to the accusative, from the east to the west, that's where the sun sets in the occasum, determinavid. So we determine these regions from east to west. Dextras, we're talking about the right hand side, ad meridian partes. So his right hand side was to the meridian parts, the south. levas, this is the left, ad septrationes, dixit esse, and the esse is because he's using a head verb of dixit. So after he determined from east to west, he said, which the right was to the southern side and the left was to the north. A signum, a sign, which is best translated as a landmark. Contro quo longissime conspectum oculi ferbent animo finibit. So here he determined an end in his mind, a finibit to his animo. Ferbent, the conspectum of his eyes, as far as his eyes could bear. Contra is facing towards him, quo longissimo, which is very far away. He took this conspectum, this sight, which he took with his eyes as far as he could, and he took a landmark, fixed it in his brain. Tum lituo in larvum menum translato, dextra in caput nume imposita ita precatus est. So then, with the litus translatoed, moved over into his larva menum, into his left hand, and his dextra, his right hand, was imposited or placed upon the caput of Numa, the head of Numa. Thus he precatus, thus he spoke. And since he's speaking to the gods, I guess it's prayerfully. Jupiter pater, Jupiter father, if es fas, if it is lawful in the eyes of the gods, that's what fas is, it's indeclinable. Hunc numam Pompilium, this Numa Pompilius, cuis, of whose I caput teno, of whose head I hold. We saw he's holding it with his right hand. If he is esse regem of Rome, if he is to be the king of Rome, so that to you signa certa, a certain signal nobis to us, ad clarissus inter eos fines quod fece. So amongst these fines, these boundaries he's determined, quod fece, which he has made, they want ad clarissus signa, a very clear sign, certain sign to us. Tum then perregit, then he acted out, verbis with his words, auspici quae mito velet, the allspices, quae which, velet he wanted, taking the infinitive, to be sent out. Quibus missus, when these had been sent out, declaratus, he declared, rex numa, King Numa, descended de temple, and then he descended from the temple.